The call came just as I was leaving the studio. A car accident. My fiancée, Chloe, had been on her way back from the airport with her twin sister. I found her in a curtained-off bay in the ER. She had a few scrapes, a bandage on her forehead, but she was alive. Relief washed over me. So potent it felt like a drug. I rushed forward, pulling her into a hug. "Chloe, thank God you're okay." She stiffened, then pushed herself back a few steps. "You've got the wrong person," she said, her voice strained. She pointed to her identical twin, who was sitting on the edge of the other gurney. "She's Chloe." I froze. The other woman, the real Chloe, apparently, leapt up and threw her arms around my neck. "Leo," she laughed, a little too brightly. "I'm your fiancé. This is my sister, Sophie." I nodded slowly, my mind trying to catch up. "Chloe, let's go home." The motion sensor light in the foyer flickered on, illuminating the apartment Chloe and I had shared for years. Sophie, the woman I was now supposed to believe was Chloe, pressed a hand to her bandaged forehead and swayed. "Honey," she said, her voice weak. "The doctor said I might have a slight concussion. A lot of things are foggy." Watching her gaze around the living room, a space she should have known intimately, with the eyes of a stranger, I played along. "Of course, just take it easy." I helped her to the bedroom, told her to rest, and went to the kitchen to make dinner. When it was ready, I walked back to call her, but stopped short of the door. Her voice, hushed but clear, drifted through the gap. "Sophie, I'm begging you," she was saying into her phone. "Just play me for a week. We'll switch back after." A pause. "Are you worried he'll find out?" Chloe's voice was laced with a casual confidence that made my blood run cold. "If he does, I'll sweet-talk him. He's so in love with me, he'd never leave. Nate's back in the country, Leo. I don't want to get married with any regrets." My jaw tightened. "Looks like you never really got over Nate Chun, did you? Just shut up and do this for me." Chloe snapped. "And while you're with Leo, try to keep your hands to yourself." I backed away silently, walked into the living room, and deliberately knocked a ceramic serving spoon off the counter. It shattered on the tile. Sophie rushed out of the bedroom, phone nowhere in sight. "Honey, what happened?" "Just dropped a spoon." "It's okay. I'll get it," she said, immediately bending down to gather the sharp pieces. "Are you hurt?"
No.
"I'm not much of a cook, so I just made some pasta." Sophie stood up and wrapped her arms around me, her gesture surprisingly warm. "Anything you make is perfect." She untied my apron, looped her arms around my neck, and leaned in to kiss me. My eyes narrowed. Just moments ago, Chloe had explicitly told her to keep her distance. Yet here she was. And another thing. From the moment I'd met Sophie, she had made her disdain for me crystal clear. So why the sudden change of heart? Just as her lips were about to touch mine, I turned my head. She froze, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "Honey, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Just tired." Sophie smiled, a slow, knowing curl of her lips. "I get it. The wedding's only a week away. I'm looking forward to it, too." The next day, Sophie insisted we go to a birthday party. By the time we arrived at the trendy downtown bar, the private room was already electric, and the moment we stepped inside, I saw them, Chloe and Nate Chin. "Leo, long time no see," Nate called out, a wide grin on his face. He and Chloe were holding hands, their fingers laced together. "You remember your old college roommate, right?" "Of course," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "My best friend." I guided Sophie to a seat, pointedly ignoring the gaze Chloe shot in my direction. Nate had been my roommate, then my closest friend. Now he was here, all over my fiancée, while she basked in the freedom of her borrowed identity. A bitter laugh caught in my throat. If this was the game, then I had no reason to hold back. A few drinks later, a party game had Chloe and Nate trying to eat the same piece of licorice from opposite ends. Just as their lips were about to meet, someone snatched the candy away. Their faces were inches apart, noses touching. "Kiss, kiss, kiss," the room chanted. Amid the noise, Chloe's eyes darted to me. I met her gaze, a wide smile spreading across my face as I clapped along with the others. "Kiss, kiss." A shadow passed over her features. She turned back to Nate and pressed her lips to his in a deep, passionate kiss. When they finally broke apart, Nate pulled a breathless Chloe into his lap, his eyes flicking to me with a smug, triumphant glint. I ignored him. A moment later, a spin-the-bottle dare landed on me. The penalty: 30 push-up kisses with a person of the opposite sex of my choice. Every eye in the room turned to me. Chloe deliberately looked away, but Sophie, sitting beside me, just smiled. I grinned, letting my gaze sweep the room. "Well," I said, my voice carrying easily over the sudden hush. "That's an easy one. I'm picking my fiancé." I turned to Sophie. "Ready, darling?" "Of course," she said, her smile widening as she stood. I took her hand and led her to a clear space on the plush carpet. She lay down without a moment's hesitation. "Whenever you're ready, honey." "Right away," I murmured. I placed my hands on the floor on either side of her shoulders and lowered myself until our faces were inches apart. Then, under the watchful eyes of the entire party, I kissed her. Hard. A chorus of whoops and cheers erupted, only to die down into an awkward silence. I continued, my body rising and falling in a steady rhythm, my lips meeting hers with deliberate pressure each time. When I finished, I noticed a cold front seemed to radiate from Chloe. The sudden chill was so palpable it had quieted the entire room. I found the whole situation absurd. She was the one who had pushed me away, the one who had flaunted her affair in my face. Why was she so upset now that the tables had turned? I looked around, feigning confusion. It was just a game. Why's everyone so quiet? Just shows how much Leo loves his fiancée, Nate remarked loudly, breaking the heavy silence. Chloe's face darkened, her knuckles white where she gripped her glass. "Well, you guys have fun," I said, standing up. "I'm going to hit the restroom." I didn't bother looking at her. On my way back, I heard their voices from around a corner in the hallway. "Sophie, I warned you," Chloe said, her tone icy. "Don't cross the line." "It was just a game," Sophie replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. "As it stands, I'm his fiancée. Who was he supposed to pick? Someone else? Or maybe you, his future sister-in-law?" Chloe was silent for a moment. "Fine, but you need to respect the final boundary. He's about to be your brother-in-law. I know you're not actually interested in him, but avoid getting too close. I wouldn't want you to get hurt, and I'd feel guilty." "You know me so well," Sophie said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I clenched my fists, a grim smile touching my lips. "Oh, Chloe, Sophie isn't at all what you think she is." Back at the apartment, Sophie suddenly wrapped her arms around my neck. Before I could react, she was on her toes, her mouth finding mine. The kiss was deep and hungry, ending only when her breathing grew ragged. "6 more days, Leo," she whispered, leaning against me, her eyes dark and intense. "6 more days until we're married." I stared at Sophie, feeling a strange sense of dislocation. This person felt nothing like the woman I thought I knew. In front of Chloe, she played the part of someone who despised me. Yet in private, she was initiating kisses and eagerly anticipating our wedding. I was an outsider in their world of old money and privilege. It was Chloe who had slowly broken down my walls, who had introduced me to her circle of beautiful, wealthy friends. But Sophie's open contempt for me had always been an unspoken truth among them. She had always sneered at my relationship with her sister. I used to go out of my way to avoid her, but ever since Chloe had thrown me to her, she had repeatedly crossed every line. Could she have some kind of grudge against Chloe? Was this all just a way to get back at her sister? The next day, I was at my drafting table, sketching revisions for my new graphic novel, when Sophie knocked and entered with a bowl of fruit. "Honey, you've been cooped up in here all day. There's a charity auction tonight. Let's go check it out." I considered it for a moment, then smiled. "Okay." We drove to the auction hall and were led by an attendant to our private box. The moment the door swung open, we froze. Chloe was straddling Nate's lap, her dress hiked up high on her thighs. He was kissing her deeply, one hand tangled in her hair, the other slipping under the hem of her skirt. As Chloe's eyes fluttered open, hazy with passion, they met ours. A flicker of panic crossed her face before it was replaced by a mask of composure. "Leo," Nate said, pulling Chloe tighter against him as if to stake his claim. He looked genuinely surprised. "You're here for the auction too? How did you end up in our box?" The event manager rushed over, beads of sweat on his forehead. "Mr. Davenport, my sincerest apologies. This was our mistake. We'll arrange a new box for you immediately." "No need," Nate interrupted, his eyes fixed on me. "We all know each other. I'm sure Leo doesn't mind, right?" He gestured to Chloe. "Your sister was just saying she wanted me to bid on that ruby ring for her. We can all watch together." The atmosphere in the box was thick with unspoken tension. Chloe leaned back against the sofa, her gaze flicking between me and Sophie, a slow smile spreading across her face. Stay. We're all family here, and Leo is hardly a stranger. I watched Chloe, so poised and unfazed, and it threw me back 3 years. I'd found Nate's watch in her car, and she'd brushed it off with that same casual air. Nate's your best friend, Leo. Don't make a big deal out of nothing. Maybe it had started even back then. So why all the deception? Why agree to marry me at all? Beside me, Sophie squeezed my arm, pulling me from my thoughts. She led me to the sofa furthest from them. Throughout the auction, anytime Nate showed the slightest interest in an item, Chloe would win the bid for him. He'd pull her close and kiss her cheek, murmuring, "My Sophie is the best to me." Each time, his eyes would find mine over her shoulder, shining with a smug, proprietary light. Once, Chloe had been the one to spend extravagantly on me, whispering promises in my ear. "Leo, anything you ever want, I'll make it happen for you." Now, it was all a bitter joke. When the final item, a pair of matching wedding bands, came up for auction, the bidding started. $10 million. Sophie's voice cut through the room. Everyone stared. The smile on Nate's face froze. Chloe looked at her sister, utterly bewildered. "I'm buying these rings for Leo," Sophie announced, her voice steady. "For our wedding." Chloe's brow furrowed. She stared at Sophie for a long moment before finally speaking, her voice strained. "Well, if Leo likes them, then I suppose we'll let you have them." After the auction, Nate and I headed to the restroom. On my way back to the box, I overheard them talking again. "You and Nate seem to be having a wild time," Sophie said. "Guess you haven't had that much fun with Leo in a while." "Huh?" Chloe's voice was laced with a lazy satisfaction. "You have no idea. Being with Nate, it's like we've rediscovered that initial spark I used to have with Leo. But Nate's more adventurous, more attentive. Being with him is just easy." "In that case," Sophie said, her tone laced with something sharp, "why not just go with it?" She paused. "Nate seems to suit you better than Leo. Besides, you're always complaining that Leo holds you back, that you can't have as much fun as you want. Aren't you? Sophie, Leo and I have years of history. It's not something you can just throw away." Chloe sighed. "Besides, Nate said he doesn't need a title. He just wants to have a good time while it lasts." "Ha!" Back at home, Sophie suddenly pulled me onto the sofa and sat on my lap, her lips finding mine. After a long moment, she pulled back, breathless, and looked at me with startling intensity. "You are the best, Leo Vance. You don't have to compare yourself to anyone." It was as if she were directly responding to Chloe's earlier comments. I stared at her, stunned. How could she know? How could she understand me so well? In just a few days, she'd picked up on small habits even Chloe had never noticed, and she was constantly attuned to my moods. This woman, whose eyes once held nothing but ice for me, now looked at me with tenderness and affection. On impulse, I swept her into my arms and carried her into the bedroom. She didn't resist. For years, Chloe had been the only woman in my life. The girl who ran through a torrential downpour to get me medicine. The woman who had fought with her parents for months to be with me. The night my grandmother was buried, she had promised, "I'll always be with you." Those vows had curdled and spoiled over time. And if that was the case, maybe it was time to try loving someone new. The next day, we all went hiking in the Catskills. When it came time to set up camp, Chloe's face was a mask of thunder. She pulled Sophie aside. "Are you two really planning to share a tent? You have to sleep separately." "It's just a tent," Sophie said dismissively. "You know I can't stand him. What are you worried about?" I cleared my throat nearby, and Chloe swallowed whatever she was about to say, her expression turning darker. Sophie just gave her a smirk. The next morning, Chloe, her face pale with fury, dragged Sophie into the woods. I leaned against a large oak, listening to her furious whisper. "Did you sleep with him? What's it to you?" Sophie scoffed. "Shouldn't you be enjoying yourself with your new boy toy instead of eavesdropping? When did you become so nosy, Chloe? Don't play dumb with me." Chloe hissed. "This act is over. I don't need you to play me anymore. We're switching back. Now." "Ha! You think you can just switch back now? Is that even possible?" Sophie challenged. "How are you going to explain everything that's happened?" "You?" Chloe's face went from pale to white. "Besides," Sophie continued, gesturing back toward the campsite with her chin. "What about Nate? He's right over there. You said being with him was so much easier, remember? Can you really handle both of them at once?" Nate and I agreed from the start it was just for fun. Chloe insisted, her voice shaking with rage. I never planned on giving up Leo. He only loves me. I know it. All I have to do is apologize. Swear I'm sorry, and he'll forgive me. She glared at Sophie, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. But you claim to hate him, and then you use this as an excuse to sleep with him. Sophie, how could you do this to your own sister? When did I ever say I hated him? Sophie's eyebrows shot up, her tone suddenly frigid. It was you. It was Nate. It was your entire circle of friends who decided for me that I hated him. She tugged at the collar of her shirt, revealing the distinct, purplish marks on her neck. Who was it that pushed him on me in the first place? Chloe's fists were clenched so tight her knuckles cracked. I must have been blind. You've wanted Leo all along. You used this whole situation to steal him from me. Steal him? Sophie laughed, a low, humorless sound. Sister, this is a chess game, and you were the one who made the opening move. The morning light filtered through the leaves, dappling Chloe's furious face. Sophie calmly straightened her collar. Since Leo and I have already come this far, and you seem to get along so well with Nate, why not just let things be? I'll marry Leo, you can go play with your new flame. Isn't that a win-win? A win-win. Chloe's eyes burned with a manic, obsessive light. I don't care that he slept with you. In fact, it will only make him need my forgiveness more. It'll make it easier for him to forgive me. She spun around, her voice firm with resolve. I'm going to break things off with Nate right now. Then I'm going to go beg for Leo's forgiveness. She shot a final, hateful glare over her shoulder. We'll see just who Leo's heart truly belongs to. Leaning against the tree, I casually glanced over and saw a figure in the distance. Nate Chen. The knuckles of the hand holding his phone were white. He turned abruptly and hurried back toward the campsite. That afternoon, as we were packing up the tents, Nate suddenly grabbed my wrist. Leo, there's a pond over there. Let's go catch some fish for the grill. I gave him a long, hard look, then picked up my fishing gear and followed him. By the water's edge, Nate shoved his phone into my hand. Listen to this. I recorded it. I pressed play. It was the conversation between the two sisters, the one about the identity swap. What's this about? I asked, pushing the phone back at him. He sneered. What's it about? Chloe had Sophie pretend to be her. His words came out in a rush, his eyes shining with the thrill of a good drama. She was bored with you, so she pushed her sister on you so she could be with me. Even Sophie is in on it. They're all playing you for a fool. I'm telling you this as your friend. He finally ran out of steam, but his triumphant expression faltered when he met my completely unfazed gaze. He just stared at me. I reeled in my line, unhooked a fish, and dropped it into the bucket. So? I asked with a small smile. Is Sophie not treating me well? She's doing just as good a job as Chloe ever did. Nate's eyes widened as if he were seeing me for the first time. You know, and you're this calm. A thought seemed to strike him. You didn't. You knew they switched from the very beginning. Didn't you? I baited my hook and cast the line back into the water. You didn't figure that out until now? For a best friend, you're a little slow. Don't go spreading it around. He stumbled backward, nearly falling. You knew, and you still got involved with Sophie? Leo Vance. You run deeper than I ever imagined. He scrambled to his feet and started for the camp. I'm going to tell Chloe. I'm going to tell everyone you've been acting this whole time. I idly swirled the water in the fish bucket. Are you sure you want to open that can of worms? He stopped. You heard her this morning, didn't you? I continued calmly. She said she was going to break up with you. Nate's face was a storm of emotions. He let out a cold laugh. If I tell Chloe you knew everything and deliberately slept with Sophie, who do you think she'll hate more? Who do you think she'll choose? Oh, in that case, I'll just have to play the victim, I said, shrugging. Tell everyone Chloe broke my heart, and I only accepted Sophie's comfort out of grief. I met his changing expression with a small, sharp smile. Who do you think she'll believe? Me? Or the guy who slept with his best friend's fiancée? You heard her. He shot back. She doesn't care that you slept with Sophie. He staggered back, a look of genuine fear in his eyes. Leo, you weren't like this before. Like what before? I asked lightly. The naive fool you thought I was? Or the ideal man for Chloe that you tried so hard to imitate? Seeing his face turn ashen, I decided to lay all the cards on the table. You deliberately got close to me back in college, didn't you? Also, you could get closer to Chloe. And now you have the nerve to judge me. I genuinely love Chloe. Nate yelled. You knew she pushed me towards Sophie, and you still slept with her? I countered. You don't love Chloe. Don't love her? I thought of Sophie's warmth the night before, and years of my own devotion felt like a joke. When I was helping her go from a rebellious teenager to the heir of the Davenport fortune. Where were you? When her parents were humiliating me? Where were you? I leaned in closer. Tell me, Nate, if Chloe lost all her money, would you still claim to love her? He pointed a trembling finger at me. Leo Vance, you're manipulative. You're terrifying.
I'm terrifying.
I straightened up and went to collect his fishing rod. The woman who pushes her fiancé on her sister isn't terrifying? The woman who sleeps with her sister's fiancé isn't terrifying? But me, the victim, I'm the terrifying one. I glanced at his pale face and brushed non-existent dust from my shirt. Don't worry. Between Chloe and Sophie, I only plan on keeping one. As for you, I have no interest in competing with you for anything. My voice was flat. Chloe is tainted, as far as I'm concerned. If you don't mind that, you're welcome to her. Nate's head snapped up, his eyes wide. You really are just after the money. It doesn't matter if it's Chloe or Sophie, as long as one of them can give you a comfortable life, right? I used to love Chloe, but look how she treated me, I said, my patience wearing thin. When she pushed me on Sophie, did she ever wonder if I'd be hurt? When Sophie agreed to deceive me, did she ever feel a shred of guilt? I paused. But Sophie, at least, isn't playing me for a fool. In my eyes, she's still clean. If she's willing to give me what I want, I'll be good to her. Nate stared at me, then started to laugh. You think Sophie is some innocent bystander? Anyone in our circle knows she's the most calculating one of all. He sneered. Be careful she doesn't chew you up and spit you out. Sorry to disappoint you, but Sophie is very much looking forward to our wedding in 3 days. I handed him his bucket of fish. You and I both know what it's like to struggle. You use your wits to climb the social ladder. I use my own means to secure my future. We're just doing what we have to. So, if Nate used me as a stepping stone, so be it. But if he tried to harm me, suddenly, I heard the sharp crack of a twig breaking nearby. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw a flash of fabric. But when I turned, there was only the rustle of leaves. When Nate and I got back to the camp, Sophie was looking for me. She walked right up and took the fishing gear from my hands. I was starting to worry, she said with a smile. If you like it here so much, we can come back more often. Before I could reply, she had laced her fingers through mine. Nate stood frozen, his face a mask of utter confusion, unable to comprehend why this woman would be so devoted to me. Just then, Chloe came striding over. She completely ignored Nate, her eyes, cold as ice, fixed on Sophie. I gave Chloe my best look of mild confusion. She suddenly stepped forward. Leo, there's an orchard over there. You once said you wanted to go fruit picking again. Let me take you. Did I? I don't remember that, I said, turning to Sophie. Fiancée, did I ever say that? You did, she said, her voice full of laughter as she winked at me. But let's grill the fish first. We can go later. Chloe was left standing there, stunned. Behind her, Nate's jealous glare felt like daggers in my back. As we sat by the grill, I could feel Sophie's gaze on me, probing, as if she were trying to confirm something. I met her eyes, but her expression was as warm and steady as ever. I smiled and held a cherry tomato from the side dish to her lips. She opened her mouth and ate it, her tongue brushing against my fingers, her teeth grazing them gently. Ever since that night, she had found ways to weave these casual, intimate gestures into our every interaction. Later, we went to the orchard. A few of the trust fund kids were already up in the trees. Chloe and Nate were still on the ground, arguing over which tree to pick. When they saw us, Chloe called out, Leo, I need to talk to you. Nate looked up sharply, terrified she was about to break things off. Seeing us approach, he quickly recovered. Leo, you guys finally made it. We walked over. What are you guys picking? I asked with a smile. Sophie was talking quietly with the orchard owner, asking which fruits were sweetest. She had just led me to a tree, and we'd picked a few pears when we heard a commotion from Chloe's direction. Chloe, watch out. Nate. A large, harmless garter snake had been coiled on a branch and had startled Chloe. But Nate, without a thought for his own safety, lunged for it. The snake bit him, and in the process, he lost his footing and fell hard from the tree. Chloe scrambled down and helped him to the car to rush him to the hospital. The farmer muttered under his breath that he didn't understand why anyone would grab a harmless snake like that, getting bitten and taking a nasty fall for nothing. He just hoped they wouldn't try to blame him and sue him into bankruptcy. Of course, Chloe heard none of it. Nate was taken to the downtown hospital. The doctor said he'd fractured a bone and needed to rest. Driving home with Sophie, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of cynical admiration. To keep Chloe, Nate was clearly willing to hurt himself. The only question was whether such a desperate gambit would pay off. That night, lying in my arms, Sophie said, "If I were ever in danger." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Don't be a fool like Nate. Just run." I looked at her, and my gaze met hers, soft and full of a deep, unwavering emotion. It was like she already knew I would never risk myself for her. "But if it were you," she said, her voice firm, "I'd go without a second thought." I smiled and smoothed the frown from her brow. "Don't be silly. We're both going to be fine." My words were cut short as my lips found hers, the kiss sudden and fierce. A moment later, her shadow fell over me. Chloe spent the next few days at the hospital with Nate. His every Instagram story featured a photo of her, with captions gushing about his dearest Chloe. My life, on the other hand, was surprisingly peaceful. With Chloe out of the picture, my mood improved dramatically. Sophie even set up a brand new light-filled studio for me. My latest graphic novel was published, and the publisher arranged a launch party and signing. I remember telling Chloe once, "When I have my first big signing, you have to be there. I want you to be the first person I share it with." She'd been dismissive at the time. Let's see if that ever happens first. But now, here she was, standing right at the front of the crowd. After the initial Q&A with the host, I stepped off the small stage. Chloe took a half step forward, her face alight with anticipation. I walked right past her. My arms closed around the woman holding a bouquet of my favorite white roses, the woman who had just launched herself into my embrace. I spun Sophie around twice before she pulled back just enough to kiss me. "My Leo," she murmured against my lips. "You really are the most brilliant man I know." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Chloe, standing frozen, her eyes red, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The day before the wedding was the anniversary of my grandmother's death. When Sophie and I arrived at the cemetery that morning, Chloe was already there. Seeing us approach, she said quietly, "I cleaned up around Grandma's stone." "Thank you," I said, then turned to Sophie with a smile. "Darling, we should really thank your sister." "Of course," Sophie replied, placing our offerings on the ground. "Although, I was just here yesterday, so it wasn't much work. You won't have to worry about it in the future, sister." I adjusted Sophie's scarf, and we knelt together before the headstone. "Grandma," I said silently, "Sophie is so good to me. I'm getting married tomorrow. I'm happy." Chloe stood off to the side, her fists clenched, watching as we walked away, hand in hand. I knew that Sophie had stopped Chloe from telling me the truth more than once. "Do you really think Leo will forgive you when he finds out you pushed him on your own sister just so you could have a fling with his best friend? Or will he hate you even more?" Chloe had been scared. She'd backed down. But with the wedding less than 24 hours away, she was finally out of time. That evening, as I was leaving my studio, Chloe blocked my path. "Leo." Her eyes were red-rimmed and hungry as they devoured me. I sighed, my patience gone. "What do you want, Sophie's sister?" "Nate and I are over. It's completely finished," she said, grabbing my wrist. I yanked my arm away, taking 2 steps back. "That's between you two. It has nothing to do with me. Leo, I just wanted to tell you. Nate and it was a mistake. A toxic affair. He was the one who kept pursuing me." She was rambling, her words tripping over each other. "I've come to my senses. It's over. It's done." I frowned. "What's the point of telling me this?" She shook her head desperately. "I was waiting for the right moment. But I can't wait any longer. Leo, I'm the one you're supposed to." I cut her off. "This is ridiculous. I'm your brother-in-law. Chloe is your sister." "She's no sister of mine," she suddenly screamed. "She's a manipulative, calculating. I don't want to hear your nonsense. Please leave." I was trying to figure out how to get away from her when I saw Sophie walking toward us. "Honey," I said, rushing over to her and wrapping her in a protective hug. Sophie moved past me, planting herself in front of Chloe. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Chloe glared back, defiant. "Do you think throwing a tantrum is going to work?" Sophie's voice was sharp. Leo is still willing to see you now because he doesn't know what you're really like. If you keep this up, you'll just push him further away. And I won't let you get near him again. As for our sisterly bond, consider it over. Sophie's words were a clear warning. A threat. Chloe froze. She understood the unspoken message. If she told the truth, I would only despise her more. If she kept pushing, Sophie would cut her out of my life completely. Under Chloe's stunned gaze, Sophie took my hand and led me away. In the car, I turned and looked at her. Over the past few days, her every action had seemed perfectly calibrated to my own desires, as if she could read my mind. Her timing, her words, her gestures. They all aligned with my own private script. It was all a little too perfect. The next morning, the hotel ballroom was a sea of white flowers and crystal. I stood in the groom's suite, dressed in a custom-tailored white suit. Nate had insisted on seeing me before the wedding, claiming he had finally made peace with everything. He was planning to move abroad after he recovered, he said, and would never come back. He assured me I didn't have to worry about him revealing the truth. The words, however, felt less like a promise and more like a threat. See me, or I'll blow this whole thing up. When he was wheeled into the room, I saw his leg was still in a cast. You're really leaving the country? I asked, walking over to him. He offered a weak smile. What's the point of staying? It would just be painful. But what I felt for Chloe, that was real. I shrugged. Good that you've figured it out. He looked at me, his expression complicated. You're a master, you know that? Getting both sisters to fall for you. You got exactly what you wanted. I raised an eyebrow. Don't romanticize it. If Chloe really loved me, would she have cheated? As for Sophie, who can say she'll never change? I used to think you were this sincere, earnest guy, he said slowly. But now I see you're always on guard. You don't have to look at me like that, I replied, frowning. I just learned that you have to love yourself first. It's not that complicated. But you got everything and I got nothing, he said, his voice hollow. Why can't you see the bigger picture? Forget about love. With all the effort you put into Chloe, you could have walked away with a nice settlement. Lived comfortably for the rest of your life. He looked at me, confused. You don't hate me? I used our friendship to seduce Chloe. While she was arguing with you, I was being extra attentive to her, taking her to do more exciting things. He confessed. I told her I didn't want anything serious, just to have fun. And she treated me just like she used to treat you. I shook my head. She's the one who couldn't resist the temptation. How can I blame you? The moment I realized you weren't a true friend, I stopped seeing you as one. Otherwise, it would have been a double betrayal. Since I had no real feelings invested in you, and you hadn't actually harmed me yet, what you did was none of my business. The only one who ever betrayed me was Chloe. Nate started to laugh. I'm honestly jealous of you, but... His eyes darted past me. But I'm still jealous because you got everything I ever wanted. With that, he lunged forward, reaching out as if to push me. I sidestepped, but in my haste, I stumbled and fell. I looked up and saw that his hands were still feet away from me. At that exact moment, Chloe and Sophie burst into the room. Sophie rushed to help me up while Chloe violently shoved Nate's wheelchair, sending him sprawling to the floor. Seeing I was unharmed, Chloe raised a hand to slap him. Stop, I said. He didn't push me. Chloe's hand froze midair. Sophie was anxiously checking me for injuries. On the floor, Nate started laughing, a wild, broken sound. Leo, after all these years as your friend, I had to learn something from you. Why would I ever actually lay a hand on you? What the hell do you want? Chloe demanded, staring down at him. After confirming I was fine, Sophie turned a venomous glare on the man on the floor. Nate looked at Chloe with an expression of utter despair, then let out another peal of crazed laughter. My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming. Look at you too, he said, his shoulders shaking. Being played for fools by one man. Leo Vance knew you switched identities from the very beginning. Chloe went rigid. You told me how much he loved you, Nate said, pointing at me. But he was wide awake the entire time. Why do you think he's marrying Sophie? Because you cheated on him, and he just went along with the switch, accepting your sister as a replacement. He turned his desolate gaze to Sophie. And you, I really don't get how you could fall for your own sister's man, a man who slept with her for years. Do you really think he loves you? It's just your money and power. The second you go bankrupt, he'll drop you without a second thought. He lay on the floor, laughing like a madman. You two turned on each other over a man who would throw either of you away in a heartbeat. Isn't that hilarious? Shut your mouth, Sophie roared. But Chloe just stood there, her face ashen, the light in her eyes slowly dying. Sophie shot a furious look at Nate, then turned to me, her voice instantly gentle. Leo, let's go to another room. The wedding is about to start. I looked up at her. Her expression was perfectly calm. Her composure never failed to surprise me. Ha, Chloe, why don't you ask him? Nate taunted from the floor, his voice dripping with self-destructive glee. Go on. Ask him if he knew the truth all along. Chloe stood frozen, her expression lost, her gaze instinctively avoiding mine. Nate's accusation, my silence. The truth was hanging in the air, obvious and suffocating, but she didn't dare confirm it. If I had known everything, it meant I didn't love her. It meant I was willingly marrying Sophie. Leo, let's go, Sophie said firmly, trying to pull me away. But I looked at Chloe, at her trembling form, and I didn't move. Yes, I said, my voice calm and clear. I've known from the beginning. Chloe staggered, her eyes flying to mine. Sophie simply lowered her gaze, as if she had expected this all along. Nate, seeing the look on Chloe's face, laughed until tears streamed down his cheeks. I continued, that day at the hospital, when you denied who you were, when you flinched from my hug, I was giving you a chance. But you let your own sister become my fiancée. You let her live with me. You kissed Nate in front of me, spent a fortune on him, doted on him just like you used to dote on me. My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. So, I gave up on you. Chloe was shaking violently. Leo, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I regret it so much. It was just a moment of madness. She reached a trembling hand toward me, but Sophie blocked her path, her eyes like daggers. Leo, I really know I was wrong. My heart has only ever been with you. The person I want to marry has always been you, she pleaded. We can get married right now. I'll be good to you for the rest of my life. Just please, forgive me. You love me, right? We were so in love. Sophie finally snapped, slapping her hand away. Chloe, the moment you betrayed him, you should have known. A tainted woman deserves to be thrown away. What right do you have to ask for forgiveness? You're the one who pushed him on me. Today is our wedding. You don't even have the right to be near him. Hearing Sophie's words, my head snapped up. Tainted. Where had I heard that before? That wasn't a word Sophie would use. Then I remembered the conversation with Nate by the pond. I'd said something just like that. And I froze for the second time since this whole mess began. No, it can't be. It's not true. It can't be. Leo loves me so much, Chloe whispered, sinking to the floor. When I had a fever, he stayed up all night, dabbing my skin with alcohol to cool me down. Last year, when I was stranded on that mountain road in the storm, he waited at the trailhead for 3 hours with an umbrella. After my surgery, he stayed by my side for 2 days and nights without sleeping. The nurse handed him a glass of water, and his hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold it. Her voice cracked. He told me that as long as he had me, he had all the happiness in the world. How could he just throw me away? Nate, still on the floor, watched her break down with an expression that was half triumphant, half tragic. Chloe, I did love you once, I said quietly, but you burned that love to ashes. Without another word, I put my arm around Sophie's shoulders and walked toward the ballroom. Behind us, Chloe's cries were raw and agonizing. She had finally realized that she had lost me completely, with no hope of ever getting me back. The wedding was grand, extravagant, and I was satisfied with the ceremony and with my new bride. Afterward, Sophie took me to a new villa. She pulled me into a hug, tilting her head back to kiss my chin. Leo Vance, I love you, the you from the past and the you of today. All of you. She placed a file in my hands. It was a contract transferring her assets. I don't ask for all of your love, she said. If you can just love me the way you once loved Chloe, that's enough. I will be loyal to you. I will give you everything. I looked at her, and the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. That day on the mountain, I said softly, you heard my conversation with Nate. She nodded, her eyes shining. A slow smile spread across my face. I took the pen and signed my name. All her assets were now in my name. When she stood on her toes to kiss me, I whispered, sometime soon, I'll draw a portrait of you. Her breath hitched, and she hugged me tighter, her voice trembling with emotion. Okay. This would be only the second portrait I had ever drawn. The first had been of Chloe. As night fell, I held Sophie in my arms, and a deep understanding settled over me. From the moment I brought her home, her every action had been telling me the same thing. She didn't hate me. She was desperately in love with me. She had only ever been sharp-tongued and sour because I belonged to her sister. But how deep did that love run? How long would it last? I hadn't been sure. Not until the day I found the cabinet in her study. It was filled with letters. Years of unsent love letters, chronicling a secret, unrequited love for me. That's when I knew. She had loved me for so long, and she had loved only me. And now, she finally had her chance. That was good enough for me. I would give her my whole heart. I held her tighter as she buried her face in my neck, her soft voice a warm whisper in the dark. Leo Vance, I love you. From the first time you came to the Davenport house, from that very first glance.